let's go ahead and get started. So, welcome, guys. I appreciate all of you showing up for our keynote conversation with Karim Shamsi-Basha and Irene Latham. Um, they have actually won a Caldecott honor for their book, The Catman of Aleppo, which is great. If you have not had the chance to read that, it's really a very heartwarming story, and I know I've enjoyed it. So they've come to talk with us today. So Irene Latham is a grateful creator of many novels, poetry collections, and picture books, including co-authored Can I Touch Your Hair? Poems of Race, Mistakes, and Friendship, which earned a Charlotte Huck honor, and The Catman of Aleppo, which won a Caldecott honor. Irene lives on a lake in rural Alabama. And then Karim Shamsi-Basha is a writer and photographer who immigrated to the United States in 1984 from Damascus, Syria, at the age of 18. His work has appeared in National Geographic Traveler, Sports Illustrated, People, Time, Newsweek, the New York Times, and the Washington Post. His children's book, The Catman of Aleppo, has received 5-star reviews. Karim has also published 4 other books. So we will have a Q&A session at the end of our meeting today. So if you want to utilize the chat box and drop any questions you might have along the way, I'll be gathering and keeping up with those, and we'll present them during that time. So that being said, welcome, Karim. Irene, take it away.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. So glad to be here. I'm going to share my screen. Karim and I have a presentation for you guys, and see if I can make that happen. My computer's doing something weird, but that's okay. There it is. Let's see. Okay, here we go. So Karim and I have had the opportunity to present quite a few times about the Catman of Aleppo, and it's just been so great to share this story with more people in the world. And we sort of, because this was a keynote and you guys are writers, and we decided to kind of take some of the messages that we've learned and from the Catman and from this particular story, and shape it into something that we hope is useful for you. So wisdom for writers from the Catman of Aleppo. You can see that drawing there is, it's one of the black and white sketches that Yuko Shimizu, the illustrator, did for the book. And it always goes through a non-color process before the color process. And we offer these as coloring sheets for kids. So when you write for children, you're always looking for ways to provide interaction with the book. So coloring pages are one way to do that. So just a little bit about me. Karim and I are going to introduce both ourselves before we dive into the meat of this particular talk. Like Haley said, I live in rural Alabama in Blount County on a small lake, and this was where we moved after we raised those 3 boys there that you see there in the middle. So my mom of 3 boys, but they're all grown up now, and I love them as adults. They were great fun as kids and still inspire me. Just memories of raising them and their adventures, and are just a huge part of my writing life. I think anyway, when you're writing for children, that you interact with children, that children are part of your life, and also remembering the child you is a big part of what goes into writing books for kids. We were talking about pets. You can see our pets up there in the corner of the screen. Maggie, who is an old cat. She's a senior cat, and she's the queen, and she knows it and lets everyone else know it. And there's Rosie, our Australian Shepherd, who is quite energetic and keeps us outdoors and doing fun stuff around the lake. You can see me with a cello, and you can see the cello in my studio here as well. I decided to take up the cello a few years ago, and I'm told it takes 10 years to learn, so I'm about halfway there, but I love playing the cello and how that kind of interacts with being a writer. They're both creative practices that require a lot of dedication, a lot of showing up, and they're skills that you can learn, the craft of writing, the craft of playing an instrument, and then there's that artistry where all the ways you bring yourself into both of those things. It just brings me a ton of joy, and it's a great challenge, which I love. You can see a picture of me with my family of origin. And we're not in Alabama. I was not born in Alabama. I was actually born in Georgia, and we lived overseas in Saudi Arabia for a couple of years. My parents loved taking jobs in far-flung places, and this is us in Thailand. I'm the middle child of five kids. And so I had built-in playmates, a lot of imaginative play, a lot of exposure to wonderful things that were different and inspiring, and just inflamed a sense of curiosity in me about the world. I've always loved travel and different cultures, and I've always wanted to learn everything. And so that comes out a lot in my books. It's me and my husband on a cruise ship a few years back before COVID. Maybe we'll get back, be brave enough to get on a cruise ship again. I'm not sure. And then you can see my book about me. I was in third grade. On that page where it says, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I wrote writer. But I'm a very shy person, and it took me years to be able to share my work with other people. So those of you who are sharing your work, putting your work in front of others, it takes a lot of courage and bravery to do that. And sometimes, it's difficult. You feel like you're being revealed. I worried, what if people don't like it? What if people don't like me? So those are very real parts of being a writer, but the best part is connecting with others, turns out. So that's why I keep doing it. It's still hard, but it's still worth it, 100% worth it. And then there's a picture of me. This totally reveals my age. You can see the big hair, 80s. College, when I was at UAB, I did the college program for a semester where I lived at Disney World. And I learned at Disney World, when you go to Disney, the whole environment is about keeping you in this little bubble of Walt Disney World, and the rest of your world, the rest of your life is supposed to kind of disappear. You're just in this joyful little bubble, and that's really what we want to do for you as writers. For our readers, we want to create that bubble, and anything that takes you or the reader out of the bubble must be repaired, must be fixed. So I feel like I spent a lot of time going back to these lessons that I learned that one semester at Disney World, about creating that environment for the reader on the page. So I have been super lucky in publishing, and these are my books to date in the children's market for 2021. The two new ones are right there in the middle. D39, A Robo-Dog's Journey, which is a novel, a dystopian novel, and then a picture book, Wild Peace. It's kind of this meditative book inspired by a poem by Wendell Berry called The Peace of All Wild Things, which you probably heard. It's just, if you haven't, please look it up. It's just a beautiful poem. And it's about a little girl who has a kind of a frenzied life, as I did as a child, and then steps into the woods and learns from the animals about what peace is. So I love writing about animals and different cultures, and I've got nonfiction and fiction and fantasy, and I've got it all. I love writing about all kinds of things. So that's me, and here is Karim.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having us here. I grew up, unlike Irene, I grew up in the Middle East, in Damascus, Syria. And this is me on the top right with the big ears, which, and thank God they kind of retreated later. This is me in my mother's arms. This is my mother and my two sisters and a brother. I'm the youngest of four. And to the left here is me with my three children. They're 29, 25, and 21. And they're amazing. I love them dearly, and we have an amazing relationship. So all of growing up into a loving family and loving my babies kind of colors my world with a love prism, which is kind of cool. We can move on, Irene. This is me in the Scouts. I was in the Scouts for 12 years in Syria before coming here, and then I became a Cub Scout troop leader when my kids were little. I'm to the left of the donkey, and the Scouts was amazing. I give to the Scouts a lot of what I am today. Taught me a lot about character and difficult decisions you have to make and how to make them. The guy behind me is the man who brought me here to the United States. our leader, Alciad. He came here a couple of years before me, and then he helped me apply at the University of Tennessee. And I came here because of him. So the relationships you make in your life, you never know what they're going to do. On the left here is me with my family at a birthday party. And I put this picture here because it looks just like a birthday party anywhere. And that's what I love showing of the Middle East.
So we get asked a lot, where'd you get the idea for the book, how the book began? So we wanted to share that with you. And it actually came from a post on Twitter. 2016, there were all these horrible headlines coming across on the news feeds about the siege on Aleppo. And then I saw this post about this guy who was an ambulance driver and was sticking around as many people were fleeing, for their lives and their safety. He stayed around to take care of these cats. So he noticed them. I kept noticing them on his drive through the streets of Aleppo, and I was instantly just kind of, my senses heightened. Just reading about the story, I just thought, wow, here's a guy, paying attention and doing something. And that brings us to our first kind of idea for you as a writer. Wherever you are spending your time, whether it's on Twitter or outside or wherever you're at work, whatever your environment is, stories are everywhere. And to write a good one, you need to pay attention. So that's our first wisdom for writers. Karim, you want to talk about who all made this book?
Absolutely. Bottom right here is Allah with the children holding the poster of the cover with the award. He was delighted. I spoke with him when we won the Caldecott, and he was beside himself. He didn't really know what a Caldecott was, and I don't blame him, but he knew the magnitude of it and was honored and had all. He's also helping orphanage. He built an orphanage, and he's got about 65 orphans. So he had all of them holding the poster. In the middle, is that Stacy? That is Stacy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is Stacy Barney, the executive editor of Penguin Random House. And she bought this book in one day, which my agent and Irene's agent said has never happened before and will probably never happen again. But she loved the story so much, she bought it in one day. I don't know what this one is to the left.
That's Yuko. That's in her
Oh,
apartment.
that's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yuko Shimizu is the illustrator, and she did an amazing job. For about 6 months to 8 months, she did research on Aleppo, and she wanted the illustrations to be authentic and real and true. She did so much research, and she would send me links and pictures, and I would give her my opinion. She did an absolutely incredible job.
Yeah, and she lives in a tiny apartment in New York City. And she said for this photograph, which was for some print promotional thing that she did, she cleared out everything. So all her stuff is behind the camera. But you can just see how artfully she lives. I just love that picture. The colors, that's just where an artist would live, So her attention to detail was just pretty stunning, and her dedication to the story. She recently, the cover art for the book sold to someone overseas, and all the proceeds to that went to Ernesto's, the sanctuary that the Catman first created. Also part of our team is all the people who went, when I saw it on Twitter, so many, hundreds of thousands of other people did as well. And it's that kind of the power of social media that propelled this story into a worldwide lens. And it's donations from around the world that make the work possible that Allah is doing now. I believe, and Karim, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think they're serving like 1,000 cats now and all kinds of other animals.
He's got at least 1,000 animals on a farm, and it's beyond me how he does all that in Syria, which is still struggling with the economy and all that. It's pretty tough.
Mm-hmm. So another piece of wisdom for all of you is to collaborate. And if you're like me, I was very solo focused. And I think that was necessary for my own journey. It took me a while to be willing and open to collaboration, but oh boy, once I did, I started collaborating with Charles Waters, with whom we've done 5 books together now, 2 of which are out, and then 3 more that are coming, and then me and Karim, and then I've just recently sold another book with another author. So there's so much joy and collaboration and the team effort. It's just I encourage you to try it. So Karim's a great source for about the Syrian war. For people like me who had no context, I was really fascinated by what was happening and curious. Having spent that time in Saudi Arabia, I've always just kind of been kind of obsessed with the Middle East, and the history and is so complicated, and all the religious factions and the turnovers of power. So I've done a lot of reading about the Syrian war. I feel like I could read forever and not completely understand it. But a book that, if you're interested, a book for adults that I highly recommend is Burning Country. Just an excellent book for breaking it down and helping people like me understand. And then if you have young people in your life who you would like to share about this war, in addition to The Catman of Aleppo, here are some titles for you. Most of these are picture books. A couple of them are middle grade novels, and can give you a really good round perspective, I think, about the Syrian war. This is one of the spreads from the book, and even when war comes to Aleppo, Allah doesn't flee like so many others. I think it's a really powerful spread, and one of the challenges of presenting war to children is, you know, you need to, we have an obligation and a responsibility to be as accurate and honest with children as possible. However, we don't want to scare them. You know, it's like you really walk this fine line. And so this was a way to start this, the book with it framed in that little window. And then, of course, the book goes on to be very descriptive with the destruction of war, but you're not seeing, you're seeing the aftermath. You're not seeing the actual war happening in the pages. So Allah stayed with the cats. He stayed in he stayed in Aleppo. So our suggestion to you is to stay with your story. I really think there's only one way to fail in writing, and that is to give up. If you keep at it, you will succeed. So Allah did that with the cats, and look how much he's accomplished in the years that have passed.
In Syria and the Middle East have often been portrayed with bias and wrongly sometimes, sometimes correctly, but that's very, very rare. The Middle East, when you think the Middle East, you always think of war. We do have a lot of war, but terrorism, yeah, some terrorists might have come from the Middle East. I think there's more terrorists from the West and other places, but regardless, there's a lot of humanity and a lot of good that comes out of Syria. Aleppo is a city of 4 million people. These are the streets. They have cars and people walking to work and families feeding each other and loving each other. And it's not a whole lot different, believe it or not, even though the language is different, the religion is different. But these are all surface things. Deep down on the bottom of, you know, deep down below everything else is just the humanity, the need for love, the need for peace, the need for community, the need for just social cohesion, just that family aspect of things is very strong in the Middle East.
So our advice to you, you know, Karim, I remember when we were first working together on this story, how kind of dispelling those misconceptions was a huge goal of Karim's, and showing the humanity of people in anywhere in the world and in this situation. You know, that's writing from that white hot center, the things that matter most to you. And I encourage you in your own projects to be thinking about, you know, what is it that draws you to that material? What is it that draws you to the story? What are you trying to say? What are the words and the light that is just trying to burst forth out of your fingers, as you get these words on the paper? And, right from that place, it can be hard. It can be, I don't know, it could just be really difficult emotionally to tunnel through a lot of the stuff that we need to tunnel through. But that's where the best stuff is in terms of the value that you can bring to other people's lives through your writing.
Can I add something here?
Sure.
This hot center is everything. It's not like 1 out of 10 things. It's what you're all about. I've been here 35 years. My mission in life is to change the perception about Muslims and Arabs and people from the Middle East. It's not a thing I do lightly. It's in everything I write. It's in everything I photograph. It's in everything I live. So just make your being, make your purpose in life, define it, and then go after it. That's it.
Here is a favorite spread that Yuko did for the book. My son and I sat and independently counted all these cats. I wanted to know how many cats were on the page. And it turns out there's 128 cats on this page, which just blows my mind. And it just shows you kind of the magnitude of what this story in real life was able to accomplish, and how important it is to simply show up. And for those of us who are writing, it means showing up for your words, showing up at the computer, making writing a part of your everyday life. When I speak to kids, I tell them, think of writing like brushing your teeth. Don't go to bed without doing it. Just make it that important to your daily life. And I don't know about you, Karim, but that's the only way it's gonna get done, is if you just keep showing up at your desk and making it happen.
As simple as that is, it's a lot of people don't do it. It's just very simple, but it's very hard.
Yeah, we all have things pulling us away. We all have families and other commitments and things that are important, but this is important too. And you have to prioritize it in that manner. So this is a neat spread, I think. It shows you how—
I love this spread,
yeah, how it moves the story beyond just animals and into affecting these children. And Karim, you know the most about the kids that Allah has been able to help. If there's anything you'd like to add there.
Yeah, we talk on the phone often. I mean, once or twice a month he'll call me and I'll call him. He calls me more. He's always excited about what he's doing and sharing with me. But I love this spread because it shows the diversity that we have in the Middle East. You have the Muslim girl with the hair covering, then you have the one without, and that's what people also don't understand about the Middle East is religion. Yes, religion is a major part of life, but half of Aleppo is Christians, exactly half. So that was very important to show in this book.
Mm-hmm. So in that picture, you saw children playing, and I think sometimes in our drive to be successful and to be published and to get those credits, and we kind of come from that the left side of our brain more than the right side of the brain. And I think it's really important, especially when you're feeling stuck, to take a step back and see how you can play with your story, play with point of view, play with a new subject, play with a new format. There's so many options we have as writers, ways that we can present words to readers. So, just allow yourself the opportunity and even, require it, like make time for that play to be able to generate the most interesting and best words possible. So it took me a long time to figure that out, and now it is absolutely essential that I use poetry. Poetry is my playground, for some reason, because there's a lack of there's much less structure in the look of poetry, and you've got so much more freedom. Then I'm able to, in poetry, I can play. So find your playground. Part of the play for us too, and the fun for us was the book was released. Um, gosh, Kareem, was it April?
April of last year, yeah.
Yeah. So this is us at Alabama Booksmith, and Jake at Alabama Booksmith has been a great supporter of the book and had us come in to do a virtual event during the midst of the pandemic. And one of my favorite things is Kareem always signs in Arabic, and he's taught me how to sign my name in Arabic, which is
She
great.
did okay. She did an acceptable job.
I still have some learning to do, right? But Kareem will put the kids' names in the books in Arabic, and it's just what a great way to share another part of the world with them too. So we're grateful for all the support of the book. You've already heard about the Caldecott Award. I do want you to know that this is an award given to an illustrator for a picture book. And so Yuka Shimizu is the illustrator who did all the amazing artwork that earned this book this award. So we're so grateful to kind of just be riding her tailcoats and on this award. Some of the media coverage, it's always a great day when you get in the newspaper. So Kareem's, I'm not in Birmingham anymore and don't get the paper, so I had several people send that to me, and it was really great. A highlight for me was being on this international news station. Kareem, what's the name of that station?
Al Jazeera.
Al Jazeera, yeah. So
it's our CNN basically.
So Kareem has had the opportunity to talk with Allah numerous times, as you've heard in this talk, and I've not connected with him in that way since I don't speak Arabic, and but here on this program they interviewed us and there was interpreters, and so we were at least side by side on the screens, even though we were across the world for one another, and that was the closest I'll ever get to the Catman, and it was just a real it was a big moment for me, and I'm so grateful for that experience. So celebrate. Don't forget to celebrate. That's a message for myself, because I tend to keep the head down and I'm working and I'm focused and I keep going. It's really important to take the time to, whatever happens with your book, just finishing a book, finishing a page, finishing a chapter, build in ways to reward yourself for all your effort. It's important. You want to talk about the foreign editions?
Yeah, the book has been translated and sold in several other countries all over the world, in the Far East and Europe, and it's just incredible. It shows the interest in this story from Syria, and I love the fact that there's Turkey's there, so we're coming closer to the Middle East. No Middle Eastern countries have bought it yet, but hopefully they will.
And the Japanese edition was particularly important to Yuko, who is Japanese American.
Yeah.
It meant a lot to her. So this is where you can donate to the sanctuary, should you feel so called to help the efforts. And please do stay abreast of what's happening. That's the Twitter feed. Another picture that I love is this one, where Allah is asking the cats to come down from the tree. And basically, in this story, Allah is a hero, and he is helping people and animals. And, to be of service is a wonderful thing. And I feel like we all have that opportunity in our writing to be a helper and to be a hero. And, the book you're writing, whatever you're working on, there's a reader out there who needs exactly what you're saying and what you're presenting to the world. And so give it to them, make it happen. Just a picture from a note from Allah. It was a really big deal for me and Kareem, important to us, that the book show Arabic and have Allah in it, and this was like his stamp of approval. So we're so glad to show kids what Arabic looks like in the book. This is a version of the courtyard that I think the first shelter. I think Yuko, do you remember? I think Kareem, she said that she kind of melded a few of the different shelters as it relocated into this
She did.
spread.
She did.
Yeah. And then here is a happy, happy picture. And that brings us to the final message. And this kind of goes back to what Karim was talking about with that white hot center. In his note to readers, Allah says, "This is a story about cats and war and people, but most of all, it is a story about love." And I think if we can find the love in all our stories, that's how we make the world a better place. And something I love with working with Karim, you said, you talked about your love goggles, that you see the world with. And that was such a beautiful part of our book experience, I think.
Thank you very much. And to me, it's about love, but it's also about a very small thing that I signed the book with, and I say humanity is everywhere. So find your humanity, find the piece of humanity that you are after, that you want people to know about. It can be in your backyard. It doesn't have to be far-flung places.
Mm-hmm.
Find your own humanity and share it with the world. We need more of that.
Absolutely. So thank you for listening. I'll now stop sharing the screen. And I will mention that King Maxie is kind of like the mascot. He's a cat who actually lives at the sanctuary, and they use him to kind of share about what's happening there. So he says thank you too. Okay, here we are.
Thank you. So we do have a couple of questions in the chat. First of which, Allison asks, "I'm curious how your collaboration worked in a daily, weekly sense. Did you meet to write together in real time or trade drafts? Did you find you had different strengths? Other thoughts or things you learned about co-writing?"
So, this book was really interesting. Karim and I traded manuscripts back and forth via email a few times. But there was not a lot in the actual creation of the manuscript. It was just a couple of weeks. I mean, it was super fast. And then, of course, there's all this collaboration that happens, through the process of when they send art to be approved, and we all had input on was this the right approach, and is it the right illustrator? And then, of course, we collaborated a ton in promotion of the book, which is something you never think about when you're writing the book in the first place. I will say that I tend to be I have several books under my belt, children's picture books, and Karim, I knew, was trying to break into the market. And so I was able to kind of give us a skeleton to work with, like the bones of the story.
And then I added the color and the Arabic feel and the Arabic aspect of the book with what's on the street and what they're selling and what they're buying, and the smells and the details.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. Walt asks, "How did you find Yuko as your illustrator? How did you collaborate with her when merging your words and her illustrations?"
Yeah, so picture books are 50% words, 50% pictures. And so a lot of what we do with picture books is we're pulling back from words to allow room for the pictures, because you want pictures to tell the story. That you don't want the pictures just to be exactly what are in the words, so you want the pictures to add to the story 50%. So we didn't choose Yuko. That's when you sell your words to this sold to Penguin Random House. The imprint was Putnam. They chose Yuko, and she was their first choice, and she said yes. So you get what you get. You do have approval, but a lot of there is a lot of trust. And that the publisher knows what they're doing, But I loved listening in, because mostly the collaboration during the illustration was between Karim and Yuko. So Karim, you might share about how some of that went down.
Yeah, for a few months, she would send me ideas and illustrations, and I would tell her, "This looks authentic. This may need a little help here and there." But for the most part, with all the research she did, she was really able to capture, I think, very, very strongly the essence of that city and the essence of the people there, and really the faces, the field, the background, the buildings in the background were very, very true to life.
I'm gonna ask a very technical question, but how did you send your manuscript in? Did you book dummy the format? Did you do it? Did you print it off and send it? Did you turn that in digitally? What's the nitty gritty on that?
Yeah, it was digital. Yeah, just an attachment, a Word attachment to an email, and of course it went through our agents first, and our agents had some input on a few little tweaks before it went out to the different editors that they were submitting to. And like Karim said, it was just kind of a Cinderella story with it being picked up by Penguin so quickly. We had an offer so quickly and a really good offer, and you know, so it just, everything just, I just remember being shocked that it's because I've, you know, done this quite a few times before, and it never had happened that quite like that in the past. So
I just like telling people my first book with a major publisher was bought in one day. I'll die telling that story.
As you should.
Great. We do have another comment down here. Wow, I love both of your stories. I really appreciate this virtual event. Thank you. This has reignited my love for writing and English in general. For so long, I have been away from writing since middle school. I would definitely go back into the world. Thankful for my professor who told me about this.
Yay. Well,
so where you? I wish Fahima would let me know where she's from. That's an Arabic name, so I'm curious.
Right. Yeah, Fahima, where are you from? Pakistan.
Oh yeah, okay. Welcome. Thanks for coming.
And please get back to that writing. So glad you're here.
Great. So at this point in time, if anyone wants to unmute and ask your questions directly, you are more than welcome to do so.
I do encourage you both to check out me and Karim's. We both have websites. We both have other projects in the works. Website irenelatham.com, and
mine is karimbooks.com.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And how did you find your agent?
Query after query after query.
We're in the same studio now, but I've had my agent. I wanted to be, my dream with writing was I wanted to be discovered off the slush pile. So I started out, I just love that idea, you know, like editor doing her thing, and then, you know, that never happened to me. And so I finally decided, I'm just gonna, it's taken too long. You know, it had been like 2 years had passed. And so I love SCBWI. If you're writing for children, the Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators is the premier professional organization for those of us who are passionate about that kind of literature. I joined SCBWI and attended a conference, and they always have agents who come, and they will look at your work, and you can have a little one-on-one with them. And I didn't have a one-on-one with this agent, but I did listen in, and I love that she communicated via email, because I'm a shy person. I'm introverted. Emails, and she's quick, and she's very businesslike. You know, she's a New Yorker through and through, and had great reputation. She's the one who Suzanne Collins of the Hunger Games fame. That's one of her big clients. But anyway. I sent her a book, and she is way back in like 2008. So I've been with her in my entire career with children's writing, and she sold for me more than 20 books at this point. So we've had a wonderful, long relationship. I'm so grateful for her and her championing my work. And one other story about her, I started out as writing novels that she sold for me, and because I started out in adult poetry, I kind of wound my way into children's poetry. And I remember sending her this email in this document and saying, you know, what do you think? And she's like, well, I've never represented poetry before, but the world needs great poetry, and let's do it. And so I've gone on to sell a bunch of children's poetry. But that's the kind of person you want in your corner, is someone who is going to champion all your ideas and believe in your value to readers. And that's what I found in her. So if you're looking for an agent, think about those things. I mean, it truly is a long-term, um, the most important relationship in the industry that you can have, and you want it to be somebody who you can communicate well with, and someone that believes in your work, that gives you all those warm fuzzy feelings when you talk about your work. You need that. So that's my
My, my,
experience.
my first agent story goes back to that white hot center thing. What I'm all about. I queried several agents, maybe, I don't know, 15, 20, with my novel, young adult novel, Cactus Bear, which is about a Muslim 15-year-old boy in love with a Christian girl in the middle of civil war in Syria. And her mom is a Jew in secret. And a Jewish agent from Israel called me and and we cried together on the phone, and several also responded wanting to represent me, but I went with her, and we had a great relationship before I changed houses. But just again, how important that purpose and that white hot center is. I like that term.
Great, great. And what's next for you two? What sort of projects are you working on?
I'm working on that novel, finishing third round revisions, and I have a couple of other picture books. One is about another humanity story out of Syria, Little Hearts Foundation, a man in Idlib near Aleppo who's feeding refugees and building schools for them in refugee camps, which is really important.
My next big thing comes out in January. It's called African Town. And if you aren't familiar with African Town or the story of the Clotilda, the last American slave ship, that's an Alabama story and an international story. But it's one I co-wrote with Charles Waters, and it's told in 14 voices. So we have the captain of the Clotilda, we have the Clotilda herself, we have a number of the enslaved people speaking and telling their stories. And the people, if you don't know the story, who were kidnapped and brought over on the Clotilda, landed in Mobile, and they were parceled out to neighboring plantations and into central Alabama as well. But a primary group of them formed a community after emancipation that they named African Town. And that community still exists. And there's been a lot of media attention since 2019 when the remains of the Clotilda were discovered in the bay. And they're doing all kinds of stuff in Mobile and African Town right now to promote this incredible history and to share this history with the world. So Google it, take a trip down there. It's pretty amazing. And it's right here in our state. So that book comes January 4th.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What do you guys do outside of your writing life to support your writing life? So when you're not writing, you've got sort of that set aside, what are the things that you're doing to sort of refresh yourself and be able to put you back into your writing spaces?
I'm an exercise freak, so I go to the gym. I teach yoga. I teach yoga at the YMCA, and I love that. I do that a few times a week, and take care of my babies, 29, 25, 21-year-old babies. And you have to read incessantly if you're writing. If you're not reading and you're trying to write, it's just not going to work. So I read a lot, and that's about it.
What are you reading right now?
I'm reading John Green. I'm into John Green right now. The Fault in Our Stars. I just finished that, and now I'm reading Paper Towns.
Yeah, I will second that on the reading. I'm on a book award committee this year for children's books, and I will have more than 800 books. I've already probably read half that many so far this year for that award, so I've spent a lot of time reading. But being outdoors for me is the big thing, and it's part of why we moved here to this this rural area and on this lake. We're outside a lot, and you know, there's just a wonderful way to be nourished by the outdoors. So I love that, and travel. I'm hoping to do more travel as we continue to come out of this pandemic. So,
where do you like to travel to?
oh my gosh, we're one of those couples who we're really into the national parks right now, trying to hit so many national parks. Right before COVID hit, we were at the Grand Canyon, and so we have several national park trips that we'd like to do. But we'll see. They're pretty busy right now. I don't know if y'all have seen the news, but you can barely see the nature for all the people at national parks this summer. So,
Right on, yeah. Okay, did anyone have any questions or any comments for Karim and Irene? Walt wants to know, will Africa Town be a children's book also?
it is a young adult. It's for ages, I think they've got it 12 and up. So they're calling it a crossover book, which means it'll have a heavy adult appeal as well. And the historical content, of course, lends itself to that. So it's not a picture book, it's a novel.
As you both mentioned, it must be difficult to adapt those kind of stories and the Aleppo story to a children's book.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I do have something to say about that. People ask me how, you know, is it okay to show war to children? And my answer is, when you look at their video games and what they're watching on TV, this pales in comparison, the way it was done and the way Yuku portrayed the war. And I think it's just reality. But video games, you know, you have blood squirting out of bodies, and TV is even worse. So I think we're okay.
Yeah, there's a book right now that just came out on a Walt called Unspeakable, and it's about the Greenwood, the Tulsa massacre.
Yeah,
and you would think that book, you know, you just think, gosh, that's such a horrific. But if you look at this book, you know, our goal as children's book authors, you know, we're trying to find, what do kids care about? You know, we're not trying to teach the kids, you know, we're trying to find a place to connect with them. And so when I think about it, I try to go back to the kid me, you know, and try to think about what were the questions I would be asking. And so with the story of the Catman of Aleppo, the cats are just like your natural in to this story, because the war is happening, but we're giving these children the focus on the cats, which makes it more palatable, you know. So you've got the love and the tenderness that a child can relate to about a cat. And what's a cat going to do if their people have had to leave? You know, who's going to feed them? And so you're always kind of going back to the child you when you're writing for children and finding those places. I do know that the topic of war in children's picture books, one thing that gets overlooked a lot, and if I could redo our book, I would include something more about this. And Karim, I don't know that we've ever talked about this, but about the Syrian war is very difficult to explain, and so we tend to not explain it to children. And so I would love the book about war that shows what happened, you know, like can explain it to kids in a way that's not too textbooky, that you know, and like what you're doing with your book, Karim, about the Muslim boy and the Christian girl. That's a little older, but that's where you can get into, these are families, you know, and you've got families on, you know, potentially opposite sides of the fence, you know, in terms of, in, you know, Syria, you could have government supporters and then, you know, the resistance, you know, kind of supporters. So I don't know, that's a tricky thing, but I do think we need to give kids credit for their ability to understand, and we owe it to them to give them their reality, as Karim said. So
yeah, I think it's okay to show war as long as your message of humanity is going to win, love is going to win. You know, as long as that message comes through, I think you're okay.
That is a rule in children's literature, is you always end with hope. I mean, we're not going to write a book for kids that isn't hopeful. So
yeah, I think kids know violence already. It's important for them to find the humanity. That's the great part.
Absolutely.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, great. Well, thank you guys so much for coming out today. Thank you for leading our discussion, and it was wonderful. I appreciate it. All you guys go out and get your copy of The Catman of Aleppo. You will not regret it. You will enjoy it so much. It is such a pleasure. So thank you guys for coming out to Spark. And
Haley, thank you so much. I really
thanks for
appreciate
being here. Yeah,
absolutely
fun. Thanks so much.
Y'all take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.